Part 3, First Blood. The sensors detected them 3 days out from Saturn. 5,000 ships moving in perfect formation, like a swarm of locusts descending on a harvest. The Council Armada had arrived. Captain Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable studying the tactical display. His ship was one of 50 positioned near Saturn's rings, hidden among the ice and rock. Another 100 ships held positions throughout the outer solar system. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. They're broadcasting, his communications officer reported. The main screen flickered to life, showing the face of Grand Marshal Threxel. The Valkyrie commander looked every bit the conqueror, his silver scales gleaming, his red eyes cold and certain. Humans of Earth. Threxel's voice filled the bridge. This is your final opportunity. Surrender now, and some of you may be allowed to live as servants of the Council. Resist, and every last one of your kind will be exterminated. You have 1 hour. The transmission ended. Doyen's crew looked to him, waiting for orders. Send a response, Doyen said quietly. Tell them we'll see them in hell. Admiral Taewon watched from the Lunar Command Center as the tactical situation updated in real time. The enemy fleet was splitting into 3 groups. One would approach from above the solar system's plane, another from below. The third would come straight through, aiming directly for Earth. They're trying to surround us, his tactical officer observed. Let them, Taewon replied. They think in terms of conventional warfare. We're going to show them something different. He opened a channel to all human forces. This is it. Remember your training. Fight smart, not fair. Make every shot count. And if you have to die, take as many of them with you as possible. The hour passed. The Council fleet advanced. At exactly the designated moment, Grand Marshal Threxel gave the order to attack. The battle began not with a massive charge, but with something the Council hadn't expected. Silence. The human ships didn't move. They didn't fire. They simply vanished from sensors, their stealth systems activated, their hulls cold and dark. To the Council's instruments, it was as if the defensive fleet had simply ceased to exist. Where did they go? Threxel demanded, staring at his tactical display. His sensor officer worked frantically. Unknown, Marshal. They were there one moment and gone the next. Impossible. Scan for energy signatures. They can't hide their reactors. But the Wraith-class ships were designed to do exactly that. They drifted through space like debris, their minimal power signatures masked by the background radiation of Saturn. And they waited. The Council fleet advanced cautiously now, uncertain. They moved into the rings, their ships navigating carefully through the ice and rock. That's when the humans struck. Commander Bora Shin led her fighter squadron in from the darkness. The X-47 fighters appeared on sensors for only a split second before their weapons fired. Missiles streaked through space, targeting the Council ship's engines and weapon systems. A dozen Council vessels erupted in explosions. Another 20 found themselves crippled, their propulsion systems damaged or destroyed. Evasive action, Threxel screamed. Find them! Kill them! But the fighters were already gone, disappearing back into the rings. The Council ships tried to pursue, but the ice chunks made it impossible to maintain formation. Ships that ventured too deep found themselves separated from the fleet, vulnerable. That's when the Wraith ships revealed themselves. They emerged from hiding positions, their weapons firing at point-blank range. The Council ships designed for long-range combat couldn't adjust quickly enough. Railgun rounds punched through hulls. Plasma torpedoes melted armor. Laser batteries carved through critical systems. Aboard the Indomitable, Doyen coordinated the attack with cold precision. Target their command ship. All batteries fire on my mark. The larger human vessels had been hiding behind Saturn itself, using the planet's massive gravity well to mask their presence. Now they swung around, their weapons charging. Mark! 20 ships fired simultaneously. The concentrated barrage slammed into the Council's command carrier. Shields flickered and died. Armor boiled away. The massive vessel, larger than any human ship, shuddered under the impact. Direct hit, the weapons officer reported. Their shield generators are offline, but the Council had numbers, and numbers mattered. For every Council ship the humans destroyed, 3 more moved into position. The initial surprise was wearing off, and the enemy was adapting. They're changing formation, Doyen's tactical officer warned, breaking into smaller groups. Doyen watched as the Council fleet reorganized. They were learning. That was bad. Humans needed every advantage they could get. Pull back to defensive position, Beta, he ordered. We need to draw them further in. Colonel Junho Nam watched the space battle from the assault shuttle. His team of 50 soldiers waited in full combat gear, their expressions hidden behind helmet visors. "Remember," Junho said over the team channel, "we're not here to hold territory. We're here to gather intelligence and create chaos. Get in, hit hard, get out," the shuttle's pilot called back. Target vessel identified. Threxian heavy cruiser partially disabled. Boarding in 30 seconds. The council ship loomed larger in the windows. It was huge, easily 10 times the size of their assault shuttle. Portions of its hull were scarred by weapons fire, and one of its engine sections vented atmosphere into space. "Brace for magnetic lock," the pilot announced. The shuttle slammed into the enemy hull, cutting torches activated, burning through the armor. Then the charges blew and suddenly there was an opening. "Go! Go, go!" Junho led his team through the breach. They emerged into a corridor filled with smoke and flashing emergency lights. 3 Threxian crew members turned in surprise, their tentacles reaching for weapons. Junho's team fired first. The specialized ammunition had been designed by Dr. Soman specifically for Threxians, electromagnetic pulse rounds that disrupted their nervous systems. The aliens collapsed, twitching. "Move up," Junho ordered. "Yuna, take your squad to engineering. I'll head for the bridge. We need their tactical database." The team split up, moving quickly through the ship. They encountered more crew, taking them down with ruthless efficiency. This wasn't a fair fight. This was war, and in war you used every advantage. Junho reached the bridge to find it already abandoned. The Threxian officers had fled when they realized boarders were on the ship. Perfect. He pulled out a data spike, a device designed by Sun Wu's team to crack alien computer systems. He jammed it into the main console and waited while it downloaded everything it could find. 30 seconds, the device's display read. Behind him, the sound of weapons fire echoed through the corridor. The Threxians were counterattacking, trying to repel the boarders. 20 seconds, more explosions. Closer now. His team was being pushed back. 10 seconds. A Threxian burst through the bridge door, its tentacles lashing out. Junho fired 3 times and the alien went down. But more were coming. He could hear them in the corridor. Download complete. Junho yanked the data spike free and ran. His team was already falling back to the breach point, fighting every step of the way. 2 soldiers went down, overwhelmed by tentacles that moved faster than any human could react. They made it to the shuttle with seconds to spare. The pilot blasted away from the council ship just as reinforcements arrived. Threxian fighters pursued, firing wildly, but the shuttle's pilot was good. She dodged through the debris field using destroyed ships as cover until they were clear. "Mission accomplished," Junho reported. "We've got their tactical data. Uploading to command now." Back on Luna, Admiral Taewon received the data and immediately put his analysts to work. What they found was both encouraging and terrifying. The Council's battle plan called for a 3-day assault on the outer system, followed by a direct strike at Earth. They had allocated 2,000 ships for that final attack. They expected minimal resistance by that point, assuming human forces would be largely destroyed in the preliminary battles. "They're underestimating us," Taewon's chief of staff observed. "They think this will be easy." "Good," Taewon replied. "Let them think that." The battle raged for 3 days, just as the council had planned. But it didn't go the way they expected. Humans refused to fight fair. They used guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run attacks, and weapons that exploited specific alien weaknesses. Dr. Soman's biological agents proved devastatingly effective. Aerosol dispersal systems released compounds that caused Velkari to go into shock, made Threxians lose motor control, and induced temporary paralysis in Novalith. The agents didn't kill, but they incapacitated, and in battle that was often enough. By the end of the 3rd day, the Council had lost 1,700 ships. Not destroyed, but damaged badly enough that they had to withdraw. The humans had lost 90 vessels, every one of them fighting to the last breath. But the cost in lives was terrible. Thousands of human soldiers and crew members were dead. The Indomitable itself had taken heavy damage, its hull scarred by weapons fire, half its systems offline. Captain Doyen sat in his command chair, exhausted, as damage reports scrolled across his screens. They had survived. Against impossible odds, they had survived and bloodied the enemy. "Marshal Threxel is retreating," his communications officer reported, disbelief in her voice. "The Council fleet is pulling back to regroup." Part 2. The Forges of Defiance. The asteroid belt had always been humanity's frontier. Miners worked among the rocks, extracting metals and ice to feed the growing colonies on Mars and the outer planets. But the asteroid belt held secrets that even most humans didn't know about. Hyun Lee floated in zero gravity, watching through the observation window as the massive doors opened. The asteroid designated as Mining Station 7 split apart, revealing what lay hidden inside. It wasn't a mining station at all. The shipyard stretched for kilometers inside the hollowed-out asteroid. Dozens of vessels hung in various stages of construction, surrounded by robotic arms and swarms of workers in spacesuits. These weren't the standard military ships that the Council knew about. These were something new. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Hyun said to the officer floating beside him. Admiral Taewon had come personally to inspect the secret facility. He stared at the ships with an expression that mixed pride and worry. "How many do we have?" 87 completed. Another 40 will be ready within 2 weeks. These are the Wraith class. The Council has never seen anything like them. Hyun pulled up a holographic display showing the ship's specifications. The Wraith was smaller than a standard destroyer, but packed 3 times the firepower. Its hull was covered in a special coating that absorbed sensor waves, making it nearly invisible to detection. It could drift through space disguised as debris or asteroids, striking without warning. "We've been building them for 6 years, Hyun continued. "Ever since we realized the Council might turn on us. Every resource we could spare without drawing suspicion went into this project." Taewon nodded slowly. 6 years. You knew this was coming. Someone had to plan for the worst, Hyun replied. The Council has ruled the galaxy for 50,000 years. They didn't do that by being kind. Across the solar system, other secrets were being revealed. On Mars, Colonel Junho Nam watched as his special forces teams ran through combat drills in the red dust. These weren't normal soldiers. They had trained for years in techniques specifically designed to fight aliens. Each team specialized in fighting one of the Council's major species. They knew the weak points in Velkari armor, the vulnerable spots on Threxian tentacles, the frequencies that could shatter Novalith crystal bodies. It was brutal practical knowledge that went against every diplomatic principle humanity had pretended to follow. Again, Hunyo shouted as one team finished a drill. "You're too slow. When you board their ships, you'll have seconds to act. Seconds between living and dying." His second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Yuna Jang, walked up beside him. "The troops are ready. They've been ready for years. The question is whether we'll have enough of them." Junho knew she was right. Even with all of Earth's preparations, they were still vastly outnumbered. Quality could only overcome quantity up to a certain point. On Luna, in a facility buried deep beneath the surface, Dr. Somin Yoon worked in a laboratory that technically didn't exist. She was a xenobiologist, someone who studied alien life forms, but her current research had nothing to do with peaceful understanding. She examined tissue samples from a dozen different Council species, looking for weaknesses. Every living thing had vulnerabilities. Some species couldn't tolerate certain frequencies of sound. Others had immune systems that overreacted to specific proteins. The Threxians, for example, went into shock if exposed to concentrated electromagnetic pulses. It was dark work, the kind of research that felt wrong even as she did it. But Somin had seen the classified files that Mira had stolen. She knew what the Council did to species that resisted. If using biological weapons meant her children would survive, she would bear that moral weight. Her assistant entered the lab, a young researcher named Daeho Lim. "Doctor, the Admiral is asking for your report." "Tell him we have viable options for incapacitation," Somin replied. "Not killing agents, but things that will disable enemy forces without permanent harm." Daeho nodded but didn't leave. "Is it true that we're really going to fight the entire Council?" Somin looked at him, seeing the fear in his eyes. He was only 23, barely out of university. "Yes, we're going to fight. Can we win?" "I don't know," Somin admitted. "But we can make them regret attacking us." In orbit above Earth, Sun Wuhan sat in a cramped workstation filled with screens and computer equipment. He was officially listed as a communications technician. In reality, he was one of Earth's best hackers, and he had just accomplished something incredible. The Council's communication network was supposedly impenetrable. It used quantum encryption and security protocols developed over thousands of years. But humans had one advantage. They thought differently than species that had been using the same systems for millennia. Sun Wu had spent 3 years finding the back door. It wasn't a flaw in the encryption itself, but in the way the system handled routine maintenance updates. He had inserted a virus disguised as a standard software patch, and it had spread through the network like water flowing downhill. Now, Earth could intercept any message sent through Council channels. They would know when the enemy fleet was coming, what routes they would take, what their battle plans were. In warfare, information was often more valuable than weapons. Package delivered, Sunwoo reported through his secure channel. We're in their system. They have no idea. The response came from Admiral Taewon himself. Excellent work. How long until they detect the intrusion, if they're looking for it? Maybe a few weeks. If they're not? Could be months. These people have been secure for so long they've gotten lazy. Commander Bora Shin sat in the cockpit of humanity's newest fighter, running through pre-flight checks. The fighter didn't have a name yet, just a designation, X-47. It was smaller and faster than anything else in space. Built for hit-and-run attacks. The prototype had been tested extensively, always far from Council observation points. Bora had personally flown it through scenarios that would have destroyed conventional fighters. It could accelerate at crushing speeds, make turns that would tear apart older ships, and its weapons could punch through armor twice as thick as what the Council typically used. All systems green, she reported. Ready for combat deployment. Her wing commander's voice came through the radio. You really think we can take on Council warships in these things? I think we can make them hurt, Bora replied. That's all we need to do. Make them hurt badly enough that they think twice about continuing. As the pieces fell into place, Ji-won Park prepared for her final act as Earth's ambassador. She had been recalled to the orbital station to deliver humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. The 30-day deadline had arrived. She stood once again on the speaking platform in the Great Chamber. The same 10,000 species watched, waiting to hear Earth surrender. The three Council leaders looked down from their screens with expressions that might have been satisfaction. Ambassador Park, the Velkari leader said, has humanity decided to accept the Council's generous terms? Ji-won took a deep breath. What she was about to do would start a war. But the war was coming anyway. At least this way humanity would face it on their feet. The people of Earth have considered your demands, she began, her voice carrying through the chamber. We have examined your terms carefully. We have debated them in every nation, every community, every home on our world. The chamber was silent now. Every alien waited for the expected submission, and our answer is no. The word echoed through the vast space. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the chamber erupted in chaos. You refuse? The Threxian's voice rose above the noise. You understand what this means? We understand perfectly, Ji-won replied. You demand that we give up our freedom, our sovereignty, our ability to defend ourselves. You ask us to trust that you will protect us when we have discovered the truth about the 14 species you previously destroyed. The screens flickered. The Council leaders looked at each other, their alien features showing what might have been shock or anger. You gave us a choice, Ji-won continued, her voice growing stronger. Submit or fight. We choose to fight. We choose freedom over safety, resistance over surrender. Humanity will not bow. She pulled out a small device and activated it. Suddenly images appeared on every screen in the chamber. The classified files that Mira had stolen, showing the Council's crimes. The destroyed species, the erased civilizations, the thousands of years of tyranny disguised as protection. Let the galaxy see what the Council truly is, Ji-won declared. Let every species know what happens to those who trust in your protection. The Velkari leader's image grew larger, its red eyes blazing with rage. You have signed your species' death warrant. The Council will send an armada to Earth. Your world will burn. Your people will be scattered across the void. You will be made an example of. Maybe, Ji-won said quietly, or maybe you'll learn that humans don't break easily. Maybe you'll learn what happens when you threaten a species that has survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that nearly destroyed our entire world. We're still here. We're still standing, and we will fight you with everything we have. She closed the channel and walked off the platform. Behind her, the chamber dissolved into arguments and shouting. Some species demanded immediate action against Earth. Others questioned the classified files, wondering what else the Council had hidden. Part 5, Ashes and Steel. The sensors picked them up at the edge of the solar system. 10,000 ships moving in formation so vast it looked like a metal moon approaching Earth. The second Council armada had arrived, and this time they came to finish what they started. Admiral Taewon stood in the Lunar Command Center, surrounded by screens showing defensive positions throughout the solar system. Every human ship had been recalled. Every weapon system was online. Every soldier was at their post. "Status report," he ordered. His tactical officer brought up the display. 400 ships under our command. 200 orbital platforms around Earth. 300 weapons batteries on Luna and Mars. And the remnant coalition fleet just arrived. 300 vessels of various classes. 700 ships against 10,000. The math was brutal. But humans had never been good at accepting what the math said was impossible. "Deploy all forces according to Plan Omega," Taewon ordered. "We make our stand here. No retreat, no surrender." Captain Doyen received the order aboard the Defiant. His ship was positioned near Mars along with 50 other vessels forming the outer defensive line. They would be the first to make contact with the enemy. "All hands to battle stations," Doyen announced. "Power up all weapons. Charge the main batteries. Today we show the Council what it means to threaten Earth." On Earth itself, billions of people prepared for the worst. Shelters deep underground had been expanded to hold as many as possible. But everyone knew that if the Council fleet reached orbit, no shelter would be deep enough. Jiwon Park stood in the emergency government bunker in Geneva, watching the same tactical displays as the Admiral. She had done everything she could as a diplomat. Now the soldiers would have to finish what she had started. "Do you think we can win?" the Secretary General asked quietly. "I think we can make them regret ever threatening us," Jiwon replied. "Beyond that, I don't know." The Council fleet advanced slowly, cautiously. Grand Marshal Threxel had learned from the first battle. His ships moved in tight formation, screening vessels on all sides, sensors sweeping constantly for hidden human forces. "Broadcast to the humans," Threxel ordered. "One last chance for surrender." The message played across every channel. "People of Earth, your resistance is admirable but futile. Surrender now and we will spare your civilian population. Continue fighting and every human will be exterminated. Choose wisely." Admiral Taewon's response was simple. "All ships weapons free. Fire at will." The battle began not with a massive exchange of fire but with something smaller. Commander Bora Shin led her fighter squadron in from the asteroid belt, where they had been hiding among the rocks. 200 fighters, each one piloted by someone who knew they probably wouldn't survive the day. They streaked toward the Council fleet at maximum acceleration. The screening vessels opened fire and space filled with weapons discharges. Fighters exploded, vaporized by enemy fire, but the survivors kept coming. Bora's targeting system locked onto a Valkyrie cruiser. "For Earth," she shouted and fired every missile she had. The cruiser's shields held for a moment, then collapsed. The missiles punched through the hull, and the ship began to tumble. Around her, other fighters were scoring hits, doing damage far beyond what their small size suggested they should be capable of. But the cost was terrible. Of the 200 fighters that attacked, only 30 made it back. Bora wasn't among them. Her fighter had taken a direct hit from a plasma cannon. She died instantly along with thousands of other brave pilots. Captain Doyen watched the fighter attack from his position near Mars. "They bought us time. Don't waste it. All ships advance. Target their formation's weak points." The human fleet surged forward. The Wraith-class ships used their stealth to get close before firing. The larger vessels hung back, their long-range weapons hammering at the enemy. It was coordinated chaos, every ship captain making split-second decisions. The Defiant shook as enemy fire hit its shields. "Return fire," Doyen ordered. "Target that dreadnought. All weapons." The ship's main railgun fired, accelerating a tungsten rod to a significant fraction of light speed. The projectile slammed into the enemy dreadnought's shields, creating a spectacular explosion. The shields flickered but held. "Again," Doyen commanded. "Keep firing until those shields fail." But the Council had numbers, and numbers were starting to tell. Human ships began to fall. The destroyer Courage exploded when its reactor was hit. The cruiser Determination broke apart under concentrated fire. The frigate Hope simply vanished in a flash of light. On Luna, Dr. Soman Yoon activated her latest creation. Nanobots, billions of them, programmed to attack Council cybernetic systems. They were released into space in clouds that looked like dust, invisible to sensors. The nanobots drifted toward the enemy fleet. When they made contact with Council ships, they began their work. Communication systems started failing. Targeting computers produced errors. Navigation systems gave false readings. Suddenly, the coordinated council fleet began to fall into disarray. Ships collided with each other. Weapons fired at the wrong targets. It was beautiful chaos. It's working, Salmon's assistant shouted. The virus is spreading through their fleet. But the council adapted. They began shutting down infected systems, fighting in manual mode. It slowed them down, but it didn't stop them. Colonel Junho Nam led another boarding action, this time against a Novolith carrier that had been disabled by the nanobots. His teams fought through corridors filled with crystalline warriors, each one deadly in close combat. Plant the charges, Hunyo ordered. We need to destroy their fighter bays. His soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, setting explosives throughout the carrier. But the Novolith were fighting back hard now, and casualties mounted. Junho was setting the last charge when a Novolith warrior caught him. The crystalline blade pierced his armor and he felt a sharp pain in his side. He fired point blank, shattering the alien's crystal body, then set the charge with shaking hands. Fall back, he gasped into his radio. Charges set. 30 seconds. They made it to the shuttle with seconds to spare. The carrier exploded behind them, taking its fighter complement with it. But Junho knew he was badly injured. Blood pooled inside his armor. Get me to the medical bay, he told his team. Then get back out there. The battle isn't over. Meanwhile, the remnant coalition fleet engaged on the council's flank. These were old ships outdated by centuries, but they were crewed by beings who had nothing left to lose. Elder commanded from the bridge of her vessel, a Karathi warship that had survived the destruction of her homeworld. All ships concentrate fire on their command vessel. If we can kill their marshal, we can break their coordination. The remnant ships poured fire into the council command ship, but it was heavily armored and defended by an entire squadron of escorts. The battle became a brutal slugging match. Then Commander Yuna Jang's fleet arrived, jumping in from hyperspace after their raiding missions. 30 more Wraith ships fresh and ready for battle. Target the escorts, Yuna ordered. Clear a path for the remnant fleet. The Wraith ships tore into the council escorts with brutal efficiency. Ships exploded. Defenses crumbled. Suddenly the command ship was exposed. Fire everything, Elder commanded. 100 weapons fired simultaneously. The command ship's shields collapsed. Its armor began to fail. On the bridge, Grand Marshal Threxel realized he was about to die. All ships, he broadcast. Continue the attack. Destroy Earth. Then the ship exploded, taking the Marshal and his command staff with it. But Threxel's death didn't end the battle. The Council fleet, now operating under secondary commanders, pressed the attack. They had numerical superiority, and they used it ruthlessly. Captain Doyen watched as the defensive line at Mars collapsed. Too many ships destroyed, too many people dead. The Council fleet was pushing through, heading for Earth. Admiral, he broadcast to Lunar Command. We can't hold them. They're breaking through. Understood, Admiral Taewon replied. His voice was calm, but Doyen could hear the strain. Fall back to Earth orbit. We make our final stand here. The remaining human ships retreated toward their homeworld. Behind them, the Council fleet advanced, battered but still overwhelming. They had lost thousands of ships, but they still had thousands more. Earth's orbital defenses opened fire. 200 platforms, each one bristling with weapons, unleashed everything they had. Space around Earth became a storm of fire and death. The Defiant took up position in orbit, its weapons firing constantly. Doyen watched as platform after platform was destroyed, as ships on both sides died in explosions bright enough to be seen from the surface. Captain, his engineering officer reported. We're down to 30% power. Shields failing. Hull breaches on multiple decks and keep firing, Doyen ordered. We hold this line. A Council dreadnought, massive and terrifying, broke through the defensive perimeter. It was heading directly for Earth, its weapons charging to bombard the surface. Doyen made a decision. Helm, put us on an intercept course. Full speed. His bridge crew turned to look at him. They understood what he was ordering. It was a suicide run. Captain, his first officer began. No arguments, Doyen interrupted. All hands, this is the captain. Evacuate the ship. Get to the escape pods. I'm staying at the helm. Sir, we won't leave you, the first officer said. Part 4. Galactic Awakening. The message spread across the galaxy at the speed of light, carried by quantum communication networks and old-fashioned radio waves. Humanity had defied the Council. Humanity had made them bleed. On 1,000 worlds and 1,000,000 homes, beings of every conceivable shape and form watched the footage. They saw human ships fighting with desperate courage. They saw council vessels retreating in confusion. And they saw something else, something that had been hidden for thousands of years. The classified files that Jiwan had released showed everything. The 14 species destroyed by the council, the lies about protection and peace, the systematic elimination of anyone who dared to resist. Kai Seo stood in a dimly lit meeting room on a station orbiting a distant star. Across from him sat representatives of 3 species that officially didn't exist anymore. The Remnant Coalition, they called themselves. Survivors of the Council's purges, hiding in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. The eldest among them was a Karathi, a being that looked like a cross between a bird and a lizard, with iridescent scales and 3 eyes. Her name was unpronounceable in human speech, so Kai simply called her Elder. "Your people have done what we thought impossible," Elder said, her voice carrying notes of both hope and caution. "But one battle is not a war." "We know," Kai replied. "That's why I'm here. Earth needs allies. You need revenge. Together we might both survive." Another representative spoke up, a Dalkin who existed as a semi-solid blob of living tissue. "The Council destroyed our worlds. They scattered our people. Why should we risk what little we have left? Because they'll come for you eventually," Kai said bluntly. "The Council has ruled through fear for 50,000 years. If humanity wins, that fear breaks. Every oppressed species will start asking questions. The Council will have to eliminate all of you to maintain control." Elder's 3 eyes studied Kai carefully. "And if humanity loses, then you're no worse off than you are now. But at least you'll have tried." The representatives conferred in their own languages, creating sounds that Kai's translator struggled to process. Finally, Elder spoke again. "We will help, but we are few, scattered, weak. Do not expect miracles from us." "We don't need miracles," Kai smiled. "We just need friends." Back on Earth, Daeho Lim worked in a small broadcast studio that had become the center of humanity's information war. He wasn't a soldier. He couldn't pilot a ship or fire a weapon. But he could tell a story, and in this conflict, stories mattered. He assembled the intercepted council communications, the battle footage, and testimonies from the Remnant Coalition survivors. Then he broadcast it all across the galaxy, using both human technology and hacked council networks. The program showed council leaders lying to their people. They showed the truth about the destroyed species. They showed human families preparing to fight for their freedom, knowing they might die but refusing to surrender. "People of the galaxy," Daeho spoke into the camera, "the Council tells you they maintain peace. They tell you they protect the weak. But what they really do is crush anyone who threatens their power. Humanity refuses to be crushed. We invite you to join us not in war but in freedom." The response was overwhelming. Most species were too afraid to openly support humanity. But protests erupted on council worlds. Workers refused to build weapons. Citizens demanded explanations. The Council's authority, absolute for so long, began to crack. Of course, the Council responded with force. Protests were crushed. Dissidents were arrested, and a second armada was assembled, twice the size of the first, with orders to destroy Earth no matter the cost. Commander Yuna Zhang had been promoted after the first battle. Now she commanded a small fleet of 30 ships, all of them Wraith-class vessels designed for stealth and speed. Her mission was simple. Don't let the second armada reach Earth. "We can't stop them," her second officer said, studying the tactical projections. 10,000 ships. Even if we destroyed 1 ship per attack run, they'd still overwhelm us. "We're not trying to stop them," Yuna replied. "We're trying to slow them down. Every day we delay is another day Earth has to prepare." Her fleet lurked in the void between stars, waiting. The Council armada moved in a dense formation, protected by screening vessels and combat patrols. They had learned from their first defeat. They wouldn't be caught by surprise again, but humans were good at adapting too. "Target their supply ships," Yuna ordered. "No fleet that size can carry all the food, fuel, and ammunition they need. They must have logistics vessels." The Wraith ship struck from the darkness, targeting the vulnerable transports that traveled at the edges of the formation. Fuel ships erupted in massive explosions. Food transports vented their cargo into space. Ammunition carriers became floating bombs that threatened nearby vessels. The Council fleet had to slow down, had to reorganize their supply lines, had to detach escort vessels to protect their logistics. Each attack cost them time. How long can we keep this up? Yuna's tactical officer asked. As long as we have ships and ammunition, she replied. Earth is counting on us. On Luna, Dr. Soman Yoon received troubling reports. The biological agents that had worked so well in the first battle were becoming less effective. The Council was adapting, developing countermeasures, protecting their troops with filters and vaccines. She gathered her team in the laboratory, dozens of scientists who had been working around the clock. We need new approaches, Soman announced. They're defending against the weapons we used before. What else can we develop? A young researcher named Minho raised his hand. What if we don't target their biology? What if we target their technology? Soman frowned. Explain. Most Council species rely heavily on cybernetic implants, communication systems, sensory enhancements, even basic coordination systems. What if we developed viruses that attacked those systems? It was brilliant and terrifying. Instead of poisoning alien bodies, they would poison alien machines. The Council's forces would lose communication, navigation, targeting systems. They would be blind and deaf and helpless. Do it, Soman ordered. We have 3 weeks before the second armada arrives. Make it work. Sun Wuhan continued his silent war in cyberspace. His viruses had spread deep into Council systems, giving humanity a window into enemy planning. But now he discovered something new. The Council was fracturing. Not all species supported the war against Earth. Some argued for negotiation. Others questioned whether humanity really posed a threat. The 3 ruling species, the Velkari, Threxians, and Novalith, maintained control through force and intimidation, but cracks were showing. Sunwoo passed this information to Kai, who was still working with the Remnant Coalition. If we could get some Council species to break away, to refuse to send ships, it would change everything, Kai agreed. But how? These species have been under Council control for thousands of years. We give them proof that they can win. We give them hope. That hope came in the form of a daring raid. Commander Yuna's fleet had been harassing the Council armada for 2 weeks, slowly bleeding it. Now they attempted something bolder. A Council shipyard orbited a gas giant in neutral space. It was building vessels for the war effort, churning out warships at an impressive rate. The facility was heavily defended, with platforms and patrol ships surrounding it. Yuna's 30 ships approached with stealth systems at maximum. They waited until the patrol ships were at the furthest points in their routes. Then they struck. The Wraith vessels appeared like ghosts, their weapons firing simultaneously. The shipyard's shields went down in seconds. Explosions rippled through the construction bays. Half-built warships tumbled away from their moorings, useless chunks of metal and electronics. The patrol ships scrambled to respond, but Yuna's fleet was already leaving. In and out in under 10 minutes. The shipyard burned behind them, a year's worth of construction destroyed. More importantly, the entire galaxy saw it happen. Daeho made sure of that, broadcasting footage of the raid across every network he could reach. The Council is not invincible, his message declared. Humanity, with 30 ships, just destroyed one of their major production facilities. If we can do this, imagine what would happen if more species joined the fight for freedom. On Earth, preparations continued. Every resource the planet could spare went toward building defenses. Orbital platforms bristled with weapons. Missile batteries covered the lunar surface. The asteroid belt had been turned into a fortress. Captain Doyen, recovered from his injuries in the first battle, took command of a new flagship. The Indomitable had been too damaged to repair quickly, but Earth's shipyards had been working overtime. His new ship was called the Defiant, and it carried the latest weapons humanity could devise. How long until they arrive? Doyen asked his sensors officer. 4 days, Captain. The second armada will be here in 4 days. Doyen nodded. 4 days to say goodbye to his daughter. 4 days to prepare for what might be humanity's last battle. He looked at the holographic display showing Earth, that beautiful blue marble that humans had fought over for thousands of years. Now they would fight for it again, not against each other, but united against a common enemy. All hands, he announced over the ship-wide channel. This is Captain Doyen Kim. In 4 days we will face the largest fleet ever assembled against our world of freedom. Part 1. The Edict of Silence. The massive chamber stretched so far that Jiwon Park could barely see the walls. 10,000 alien species filled the seats, creating a sea of colors and shapes that no human mind could fully comprehend. Some floated in tanks of liquid, others existed as clouds of glowing gas. Many looked almost normal, with heads and arms and legs, but their skin shimmered in colors that hurt to look at. G1 stood alone on the speaking platform. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her face remained calm. She had represented Earth for 7 years now, and she knew how to hide her fear. The translation device in her ear buzzed constantly, converting the alien languages into words she could understand. Above her, 3 massive screens displayed the faces of the Council's leaders. The Velkari representative looked like a cross between a mantis and a dragon, with silver scales and eyes that glowed red. The Threxian was worse, a mass of tentacles surrounding a single enormous eye. The Novalith appeared almost human, except for the fact that its skin was made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. Ambassador Park, the Velkari leader, spoke, its voice like grinding metal. The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding humanity. G1 felt her stomach drop. This was it. 3 months of closed meetings. 3 months of being excluded from discussions about her own species. She had known something bad was coming. Humanity has been part of our great civilization for 32 years. The Velkari continued. In that time you have shown remarkable growth. Too remarkable, perhaps. The chamber erupted in sounds. Some species made clicking noises. Others hummed or shrieked or produced sounds that the translator couldn't even process. G1 understood the meaning anyway. They had made their judgment. Your military expansion concerns us, the Threxian added, its tentacles writhing. You build ships faster than any species in recorded history. You develop weapons at an alarming rate. You are too aggressive, too unpredictable. We have never attacked anyone, G1 said, keeping her voice steady. Every ship we build is for defense. Every weapon is to protect our home. That is what they all say, the Novalith replied, its crystal face reflecting light in strange patterns. The Council has protected galactic peace for 50,000 years. We do so by preventing threats before they emerge. The Velkari's image grew larger on the screen. Therefore, the Council decrees the following. Earth must dismantle 90% of its military fleet within 6 months. All remaining ships will be equipped with monitoring systems controlled by the Council. Earth will submit to protective oversight for a minimum of 500 years. These terms are not negotiable. The chamber exploded with noise again. Some species cheered. Others made sounds of approval. A few seemed uncertain, their representatives shifting uncomfortably in their seats. G1 felt like she had been punched in the stomach. 90% of their fleet. 500 years of occupation. It was a death sentence disguised as protection. You cannot do this, she said, her voice rising. We are a sovereign species. You have no right. We have every right, the Velkari interrupted. The Council exists to maintain order. You will comply or you will be made to comply. You have 30 days to signal your acceptance. If you refuse, the consequences will be severe. The screens went dark. The meeting was over. G1 stood there alone on the platform as 10,000 aliens filed out of the chamber. Some stared at her as they left. A few made gestures that the translator identified as expressions of pity. Back in her quarters on the orbital station, G1 immediately opened a secure channel to Earth. The face that appeared on her screen belonged to Admiral Taewon Kang, the Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces. His gray hair and lined face showed the weight of his responsibilities. They did it, G1 said without preamble. They want us disarmed and occupied. Taewon's expression didn't change, but his eyes grew cold. I was afraid of this. How long do we have? 30 days to accept. 6 months to implement. And if we refuse? They were very clear about that. Severe consequences, Taewon nodded slowly. I need to brief the Secretary General. Can you find out anything else? Anything about their real intentions? I have someone working on it, G1 replied. That someone was Mira Choi, an intelligence officer who had been embedded in Council space for 5 years. She posed as a trade representative, but her real job was to gather information that the Council didn't want humanity to know. Mira worked in a small office in the lower levels of the station, where the less important species conducted their business. Nobody paid attention to her. That was exactly how she liked it. While G1 had been in the Council chamber, Mira had been breaking into the classified archives. The security was impressive, but humans had one advantage over most alien species. They were very, very good at finding ways around rules. Mira's custom software, designed by the best hackers on Earth, slipped through the Council's defenses like a knife through paper. What she found made her blood run cold. The files went back thousands of years. 14 species, all described as emerging threats. All of them had been given the same choice Earth now faced: submit or face consequences. The files detailed what happened to each species that refused. None of them existed anymore. The Council had destroyed them. Not quickly, not cleanly, but systematically. They had bombarded their worlds, hunted down their survivors, erased them from galactic memory. The oldest extinction had happened 12,000 years ago. The most recent was just 300 years in the past. Mira copied everything she could find and sent it through the encrypted channel to Earth. Then she sent a second message to G1. They've done this before. Many times. We need to leave, now. On Earth, emergency meetings were happening in every major capital. The Secretary General appeared on screens worldwide explaining the situation to humanity. The response was immediate and unanimous. No surrender. No submission. No chains. Captain Doyen Kim stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, Earth's largest warship. He watched the news broadcasts with his crew, seeing the determination on faces across his homeworld. His communication officer turned to him with wide eyes. Captain, we're receiving new orders. All fleet commanders are to report to Lunar Command immediately. Doyen nodded. He had known this was coming. Every captain in Earth's fleet had known deep down that eventually they would face this choice. Be slaves or be warriors. He looked out at the stars through the main view screen. Somewhere out there, the Council's forces were preparing to enforce their decree. They had thousands of ships, millions of soldiers, weapons that had conquered countless worlds. But they had never faced humans before. They had never fought a species that had clawed its way up from a single planet, through wars and disasters and near extinctions. They had never encountered a people who would rather die standing than live kneeling. Set course for Luna, Doyen ordered. Maximum speed. As the Indomitable accelerated toward Earth's moon, Doyen thought about his daughter. She was only 7 years old. He had promised to take her to see the Saturn colonies next month. That probably wouldn't happen now. There might not be time for promises anymore. But if he did his job, if every human did their job, maybe she would grow up free. Maybe she would never know what it meant to bow to alien masters. That was worth fighting for. That was worth dying for. In the Lunar Command Center, Admiral Taewan Kang stood before a holographic display showing Earth's entire military disposition. 300 ships, 70 orbital platforms, 200,000 soldiers. Against a galactic empire that had stood for 50,000 years. The odds were impossible. The outcome seemed certain. But Taewan had studied military history his entire life. He knew that sometimes the impossible happened. Sometimes the underdog won. He activated the communication system connecting to every ship, every station, every military installation in the solar system. This is Admiral Kang, he said. You all know what the Council has demanded. You all know what will happen if we submit. I'm here to tell you that Earth will not bow. Humanity will not surrender. We will fight and we will make them bleed for every inch of our home. Prepare for war. Across the solar system, humanity began to move. Ships that had been scattered for training exercises formed into battle groups. Weapons that had never been fired were brought online. Soldiers said goodbye to their families and reported to their stations. The Galactic Council had made a fatal mistake. They thought humanity was just another young species that could be bullied into submission. They thought wrong. In 30 days they would learn the truth. Some prices were too high to pay. Some fights were worth fighting no matter the cost. Humanity would show them the meaning of defiance.